really close.
Is that working now? Everyone, thank you. As I lay in bed last night and heard the rain against the window, I thought, oh no, is anyone going to walk to the office this morning? You're all here, that's fantastic. And thank you online to those joining us. We had over 200 persons sign up to this event today, so we're really pleased to welcome you all to our second NHS Estates Fire Safety Forum 26. We hosted this event last year. As the owner of the company at Specialist Door Solutions, we're really delighted to be able to host a forum where we can updates in the healthcare sector to fire safety. Fantastic panel with us to I do a really brief. Anybody hasn't yet found out, often back to working. Help yourself out the back there. If there is a fire, it will be a real one. We'll all be proud. So no planned. So I'm going to get straight into this. So it's all getting the most out of it. And I'm going to do a really brief introduction to our panelists. We've fantastic experts from across. So we've got Maz Dowd with us. Maz Dowd, who is the head of fire safety for NHS England. So he is the person in charge of which we abide and is meeting us. He'll do a full introduction in a second. Ayad with us from Trust. She is fire safety lead at Leeds Teaching Hospital. She's also a member. We have Alan Oliver joining us, who is a well-known person in the fire safety, technically as a fire safety professional associate, and also doing a lot of. And then pleased to have Adam Richardson with us from Killing God Architects. Yes, thank you. So yes, without any further waste, go straight into slide and then what we're going to each person. Please do send your through. What the person going with changing them. So over to you, Maz.
Months ago, we got more stuff. There's a new section on maintenance change in there. Search strategy. Previously, of this just said, along in a patient access area, you call wasn't what people are doing, so this is changed to reflect that. Maintenance section is really worth it because it gives you guys a lot of scope to do pretty much what you need to do in terms of maintenance for your fire alarm. Thanks. So maintenance is important. If we can move on to the next. You need to do. So this is another thing introduced as well. Fire safety advisor basically does distinct roles, and one of them, maintenance, said is sure you have a safety maintenance. This might be shared by more than one person, for instance. Third one doing. Ideally, we'd probably prefer it if it was the same person doing the whole lot, if they had the depth of knowledge to do that. But where it's a specialism, you can go to the specialist person. And the main reason for this is, without this person, you're very much at the control of the contractors that come in and say to you, oh, we need to come in and check the fire doors every 6 months, because that's what it says in BS 9999 or whichever BS they happen to quote at the time. Sure enough, it probably does say in there, fire doors should be checked 6 monthly. But the legal requirement isn't to follow the British standard. The legal requirement is to maintain your fire doors in good order. And some fire doors you might need checking 6 monthly. Some you might need checking 2 yearly. Some you might need checking monthly. So it's up to you to look at your fire doors and bring in your own schedule of maintenance. And this is where you need to be telling the contractors that are coming in to do the work for you, this is what we'd like to do here. So this is a very important person. So make sure you have the person appointed. Fire alarms is another good example. For instance, how often do you do the weekly check of your fire alarms? What's the point of doing your weekly check of your fire alarms? I worked at St George's Hospital in Tooting for a while. There are 3,000 fire alarm call points there. If you go around and test one every week, like it says in the British Standard, it's a pointless exercise. So you need to decide what's helpful to your trust and what's useful to you and how you need to do it. And that's why this person is so important. We can move on to the next slide, please. Part K, we've introduced Part B. We've introduced Part K, which is on fire risk assessment in complex healthcare premises. It aligns to PAS 79. It introduces primary and secondary fire risk assessment. So the primary ones for the sort of fabric of the building, fire alarm, the external walls, and it's one risk assessment that covers all of those. And then you'd have a subset, the secondary ones, for all the wards or departments within it. So that's quite a big departure from what was happening before. And I hope it's working out there, because I haven't had too much negative feedback on this yet. So if you let me know, then please, then that would be great. And if we can move on to the next slide. So I'm just going to talk about fire doors briefly, because we are here at SDS. And we give in Part K more comprehensive guidance on assessing and maintaining fire doors. And I mentioned a little bit earlier, how often do you need to do them? Well, that's up to you to decide, really. You can accept notional fire rated doors if you professionally assess them as likely to perform adequately. It's very easy to go along and check a fire door against a list of, tick points. Pretty much anyone can do that. They can measure gaps and they can see if it's twisted or warped. But assessing whether or not that fire door is likely to provide the fire resistance necessary in that particular situation is primarily, I think, the person doing the fire risk assessment who has a more holistic overview of fire safety in that building, rather than just looking at that fire door and ticking off a list of things. If we can move on, please. Competence is a really big thing at the moment. Who's competent to do a fire risk assessment? I'm not going to go into it in too much detail at the moment, because it's still big time under discussion But there is guidance in there. And if we can move in. Yes. So 0501, that's on managing fire safety. I was told about 5 or 6 weeks ago that it would be issued in 2 weeks' time. I'm still waiting, but it's likely to come out any day now. If we can move on to the next slide, I'll just cover a couple of the main changes in there. One of the main ones is this, the management of fire safety, the management structure. And you can see we've got a couple of quite different aspects of it here. At the top on the right, we've got the person called the independent external advisor. Sorry, this is a previous version of that. They are now called the independent expert advisor, in brackets, AE fire. And they are the person that comes along and does an annual audit for you on fire safety in your premises. And right at the bottom on the right hand side, we've got your fire engineer, who is who was perhaps your authorizing engineer, but that's the person that comes in, and we would expect them to be a fire engineer, as in IFE fire engineer ideally, who then gives advice as necessary. So this isn't quite as it is in the latest version. It's changed slightly. It may even change again before it's issued, but I'm hoping that it's going to be any day now. If we can move on, please. And this is the other quite important thing, and I'll just touch on this. Fire safety group, fire safety committees, they tend to be called now. Who's on it? How often do they need to sit? How important are they? This is covered as well in 0501, as well as quite a lot of other stuff. But again, hopefully it'll be out very soon, and you'll be able to have the joys of reading through it and saying, this is such a good document, because I think it is. We can move on, please. So what's next? We have just decided that 0502 is going to be the next document. So that's especially probably of interest to architects, because it's fire safety in the design of new hospitals and extensions as well. So we're starting work on that. Well, we've started work on that, in fact. So I imagine it will probably take another 12 months or so before it's hit the shelves, but maybe longer. But if there's anything that you're particularly concerned about that you want included or excluded in 0502, please let us know at this stage, and it will be done. We are also thinking of including in 0502 a section on water suppression systems, which would be, sprinklers are already covered in there to some extent, but we'd perhaps put a little bit more about water mist in there as well, because quite a few hospital trusts nationally have or are talking about introducing water mist systems as well. And that's, I think that's it from me.
Thank you, Matt. Should we use this going? So thank you, Maz. We're going to try and improve on the audio for the next piece. Sorry, Maz, for that. Is that working? Brilliant. Okay, I won't touch it. So thank you to Maz. And what I love about being able to have Maz here is, with so many of you here in the audience today and online being from Trust, you're the persons that are working and delivering and abiding by the rules which Maz's team are setting and creating. So I think having this kind of forum where we can feed back to each other is fantastic, because that's how things develop properly. So again, just remind everybody in the room and online, any questions for Maz, please do make a note, hold them. You'll have a chance to ask them at the end. And I really hope, please, I really would encourage you to do so, because that's where we learn, and that's where we kind of develop things to be the best possible solution. So we're going to move, I'm going to introduce now Karen Bayard from Leeds Trust. We've already mentioned. Karen's, sorry, we're going in order of slides. Sorry, I was going in order of chair. So I'm going to introduce Alan Oliver, who has been, like I say, he's a been involved in NARFO for many years, and he's given up a huge amount of his private time over the years in working on his reference documents, which are available freely as guides widely, and many of you would know them already as guides for you to use within your trust on delivery of the various aspects of fire safety. I'll let Alan enlarge on it. So, Alan, I'm going to hand you this one, if that's okay, and you can run through your slides.
Okay, thank you, Russell. Yes, firstly, thank you to NHS England and SDS for inviting me to come along today. For those who don't know, I retired last June after 45 years in the passive fire protection industry. But 7 years ago, I joined NARFO to write these reference documents. How many people know about the reference document? Can I have a quick hand up? How many people are aware? Right, about half of you. So it's really, really good that the other half are here today, so you can have a slight insight into what these are all about. So yeah, having retired last June, I'm wanting to carry on being an active member of NARFO. I decided, well, to be an active member, I need to do something. So what I decided to do was to write another paper. These reference documents were written on the back of having written a paper and having formed a working group within NARFO. That's why I joined NARFO 7 years ago and created working groups, wrote these reference documents. Can everybody hear me? Okay, by the way, is everything good? Hold the mic closer. Okay. So yes, so I decided to write another paper, and I decided that I wanted again to form a working group of NARFO members. So I've asked for volunteers, and so far I've got 17 volunteers who've agreed to sign up to help me write this paper, including Maz and including Karen, which is fantastic, and including Mike and Nick from Croydon who are in the audience today. And what I want to do is to explain what the paper is all about, why it needs to be written, and what we're hoping to achieve. Next slide, please. So these are the two main aims. First of all, promote the knowledge contained in these reference documents, because as we've already seen this morning, although the first one has been around for 7 years now, there's still not enough people who know about them. But it's not just a question of knowing about them. You've then got to understand them, and you've got to want to apply the knowledge. So that's one of the main aims. And if the knowledge isn't being applied, why isn't it being applied? We're trying to investigate what the blockers might be that's preventing the information in these documents to be taken on board. The second main aim is to examine the extent that third-party certification schemes are fit for purpose, because we're all aware that 9 years after Grenfell Tower, we still don't have standardised systems. And I think a lot of you today and online will be aware that a lot of these third-party certification schemes, particularly for installers, don't actually function very well. And what we're looking to do is investigate. We will look to talk to the people who have the schemes. We'll look to examine some of the people within the scheme, and we'll look to see what we can do to help find to what extent they can be improved. And if they're not being improved, we want to share that information. I understand there's 402 current members in NARFO. So we've got a huge membership, and I think it would be really, really useful if we could use that membership in a nice way. First of all, 17 in the working group. If there's anybody here today who is a member of NARFO who'd like to join the working group, please let me know. And if anyone's online who would like to contact me, please let me know. My email address will be the last slide if you pick that up, or you can get me through SDS. And just before I forget, one thing to say, even if you're not a working member, even if you're not a member of NARFO, I'd still like to hear from you. You can't be part of the working group because this is a NARFO-led initiative, but you can still peer review the documents. You can still provide thoughts on what we should do regarding this paper. I think this is a very, very ambitious paper. I'm really pleased we've got 17 people in the working group so far. What we'll be looking to do is to split into subgroups so that one group focuses on that and the other subgroup focuses on that. Next slide, please. some of the guidance in the document is absolutely key to having fire compliant healthcare buildings, and not least 3 types of inspections. I haven't got time to outline that in my introduction. So next slide, please. And similarly, it's absolutely vital that hospitals work to fire door protocols and fire compartment protocols. So we will be looking to provide guidance on that in the paper, and we'll be looking to impress the need for these. Next slide, please. I don't know how many people here today might have read the local Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government policy paper update, but they provided a statement last month, and it mentioned that, you know, they're still investigating what went wrong at Grenfell Tower, and 9 years later, what they're saying is that the Grenfell Tower fire exposed profound systemic failures and gaps in professional competence and ethical behaviour. I just want to quickly focus on that before I get brought off the stage. So next slide, please. So looking at professional competence, we know that people do not understand fire doors. We know that there's on an industrial scale, people in estates, people in projects, they really don't understand fire doors. And I just want to give you a quick sort of example of what some of the issues are. I was recently asked to peer review a paper by someone who's very, very technically knowledgeable and competent. And he gave me those paragraphs to peer review and to critique. I just wonder if you could just spend like 30 seconds having a look at that and telling me what might be wrong with that statement, with those words. Anybody, please don't be shy. Shout out if you can see what's wrong. Absolutely, it's just a door. And what do you mean by a door? Are they talking of a door leaf or a door assembly? And when you look at that, next slide, please, you start to see a completely different picture for me. Those are the words highlighted in yellow that I added. And I think you can see that whereas that suggests that everything in the garden is rosy, you start to understand that it's far more complex than the first paragraph assumes. You know, are they talking, when they say a fire door, are they talking of a fire door leaf? Are they talking of a fire door assembly? If it's a fire door assembly, you've got to ensure that all the other components are right. And what about the guys who take a certified fire door leaf and cut a hole in it and put 30 minutes fire rated glass without any competence and think they've got a 30-minute fire door with glazing? There's all sorts of issues, and this paper will be looking to examine all about professional competence. A lot of it, obviously, is to do with education, and we'll be looking at that as well. Next slide, please. And then ethical behaviour, or what Dame Judith Hackett called gaming the system. This is what the contractor, a large national contractor who works in lots of hospitals at the moment, this is what they say about themselves. Can you read it okay? If you're not, okay. And next slide, please. This is what someone in the working group says about them. XXX were dreadful, and I'm surprised and quite shocked that they're still in business. The problem is that they can and do give the fire safety industry a bad name. We'll be looking to investigate the good, the bad and the ugly, because there's an awful lot of ugly in fire door installations in hospitals, probably right now as we speak. I highlighted the words. I've put the last sentence in bold because this means a lot to me. I've been in the private sector prior to retiring for 45 years, working in passive fire protection, and it's really hurt me to know that, you know, there's some really bad people out there who get away with it. And having been a member of NARFO, having attended meetings for 7 years, I'm shocked by the feedback and to what extent people, quite rightly in hospitals, responsible for fire safety, are suspicious of the people in the private sector. And I want to do something about it. Now that I'm retired, I can confront people and I can ask hard questions, and it doesn't embarrass people who I used to work for. And it's not as litigious anymore for me to say to people, just like the boy in the Emperor's New Clothes. You're not wearing any clothes. And either get some clothes on or get out of here. And that's what we're looking to do with this paper. Next slide, please. So there's my email address. If you can't read that, apologies, but you can contact me through SDS. And I'd love to hear from everybody here and everybody online. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alan. It's great. And as always, it's great to hear your passion. And I think we recognise the fact that you're doing a huge amount of unpaid work in helping to improve and deliver patient safety, which ultimately you could write that as the brand. We've all in this room, we've got architects, we've got trusts, we've got protection specialists, we've got manufacturers. But I think all of us, what we're working towards here is bettering patient safety. That's the kind of the brand that unites us. So we'll come back again. Any questions for Alan? Do please hold those questions to come up at the end, and you can ask them to him directly. And we will circulate Alan's details afterwards, so that, of course, you can get involved in his working group. These documents are well recognised and incredibly useful. And again, it's a fantastic way of collecting all the collective input from different parties. So on that point, we're going to now move over to Karen from Leeds Trust. So she's going to talk about it from the angle of a trust, which is obviously a user of or an abider by these regulations. So Karen, stick to the mic.
Can everybody hear me? Okay. But my name's Karen. I'm the fire safety lead for Leeds Teaching Hospitals. I've spent probably 25 years now in NHS fire safety. In 2013, I got my master's degree and I wrote my dissertation in fire doors. The trust paid for my degree and I wanted to do something that was a benefit to the trust. I didn't just want to write a dissertation that wouldn't help at all. So I've spent a lot of time looking at fire doors. We've rethought how we're doing things within the trust to make it better and make it work. I've lots of issues with accreditation. I've lots of issues, like Alan said, with contractors. I could show 100 pictures of poor work that's just taken place this year. So it is quite difficult. I've spent probably 20 years in mental health. So if anybody knows the mental health sector, our doors get battered every single day. So it's about making a system that works for us, but also means that we're safe for the patients. And if we have a fire, it's more when we have a fire that I know that people are going to be safe. Have the next slide, please. So this is an example of some of our doors. So this one here was a patient decided they didn't like the glazing. It was actually an airlock, was that? So it was actually both sets of doors that we'd lost all the glass to. Pivots, I don't like pivots at all. Don't like them in the acute trust because they get hit with trolleys, porters, wheelchairs, trolleys, and they split. Mental health patient does the same job. That door there was actually 5 days old when patient broke it. And that's, in the mental health industry, that's quite normal. It's absolutely fine to put a load of paint all over my brush seal as well. So I have constant issues with the level of maintenance we get. Glazing, we've still got quite a lot of areas that have got Georgian wire glass in mental health, which, although we'll accept in the acute trust, I don't want in mental health, it's unsafe. So in the acute trust, we will keep it until we change in the area, but in mental health, I don't want Georgian wired at all. And the far end was a bedroom door that the contractor told me was just being a bit fussy. We took the ironmongery off and that's what I saw behind it. And that, well, it's compliant. It's got a fire door sticker on. It's amazing how fire door stickers make a door compliant. It might not have ever been a fire door in its life, but as long as you put a fire door sign on it, it's become a fire door. Could I have the next slide, please? So we've looked at ways of making things better. In an ideal world, I would like new fire doors throughout the trust. That's not going to happen. I've got to work out ways of making things work for us. Accreditation doesn't work for us because we can't maintain the accreditation. So we've looked at things that we can do. I use edge protection all the time for filling gaps in doors. It's marvellous if I've got a gap that's too big, it'll fill all sorts of issues. We only specify now solid core doors. My joiner was not very impressed with what he calls Weetabix core, so we will only specify solid core. So we have got a chance of doing something to it. We will impact protect doors that we've seen that there's an issue with. We'll impact protect them from the outset, depending where we've seen the evidence of the damage pre-new door. So if the damage is full height because cages have been rammed through it, we will impact protect the door from full height. So it's about looking at your existing door that you're going to replace, seeing what damages it's got on it and trying to design that damage out, because otherwise you're just going to end up with a door that's damaged straight away. We'll put some hold opens on doors in high traffic areas just so they're not getting as damaged as much as they do now. And I love continuous hinges, so much so that I won't have a pivot now at all. I just continuous hinges in mental health support the door from top to bottom, and we don't get issues with doors being split. They do get damaged still, but they're not split. So that's made our life a bit easier. And the top one there, we specify flush glazing beads, because one of the areas that constantly gets damaged, both in mental health and acute, is the glazing beads get hit and then the door's damaged. So I will only specify flush glazing beads. Contractor said to me the other day, well, they're nearly flush. I said, but nearly flush ain't good enough. If they're not flush, don't give me my door. We've specified 10 to 12 mil glazing, because I want to reduce the amount of glazing damage we've got. And somebody told me that 6 mil was absolutely same, it's still fire rated. So it might be still fire rated, but it's going to get broken. 12 mil glass costs a lot more from the outset, but then I don't lose any glass. I've never had yet, I've no wood to touch, but I've never had yet any 12 mil glass broken. But I have had lots and lots of 6 mil glass broken. Can I have the next slide, please? So as I was saying, what we've done as a trust, I have written a fire door specification. So this is my BM Charter fire ass specification. This is what we maintain our doors to. Helpfully, because I've worked in mental health such a long time, I don't need to send my door to fire ass and BM Charter to do a fire test because my patients do it. So I know that door will do what it needs to do in a fire situation because we've had enough fires to test it. So that specification specifies the products we're going to use, specifies what a new door needs to look like, down to what seals we will have in a new door, the type of glazing, the type of ironmongery, because it's trying to make the maintenance of that door easier from the outset, so that so our staff on site, we've got a joinery team at the trust, are going to site knowing what seal it's going to be in that door, because we don't have 45 different sorts of seals. So everything is specified. We also have repair techniques that aren't BM Charter repair techniques. They're our repair techniques that we are happy do what they need to do for our doors. And it works for us. It's still a bit of a work in progress with contractors. It's been in since last year. We've still got contractors. Oh, yes, we can go through your spec and our door will be your spec, and then we get it on site and it's not to our spec. So there is still issues, but hopefully by this time next year, we should be fully on board with this and it should be working properly. Can I have the next slide, please? So this is just some of what we get. We do have a lot of fires in mental health. I think the trust we support in the last year's had 35 fires. None of them that big, but it's enough fires. But we also get them in the acute trust, and it's about making sure that the doors we put in there will provide the protection from the fire and also enable people to evacuate past that area. So I am really passionate about making the doors work for us. We are bringing our door surveys in-house because we get contractors to come and do door surveys. They do them to BM Charter standards, but we're not maintaining them to BM Charter standards. And virtually every door gets condemned. So we are bringing the inspection in-house, and we will be inspecting to our standard. that we can evidence works. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. That's interesting. And I think Karen and I can unite happily on the fact that doors will get damaged. It's not if they get damaged. And I think most of the room will probably agree, if not all of you, that they will get damaged in healthcare. So whether it's a door, whether it's another component part of the building, obviously we're talking today about delivering safety and maintenance of safety. So I think Karen's just highlighted a really important part that we're looking at almost 2 points here, which are going to lead into the architect's viewpoint in a second, which is retrospective maintenance and keeping what we've got safe to the best possible way that we can within the funds or lack of funds they may be in so many cases, but then also specifying the right product. So you touched on impact protection, protecting the products so that we can maintain this compliance going forward. So I think that leads nicely, Adam, into you. So we've got Adam Richardson from Gilling Dodd, who's going to talk obviously from specifying at the start of the design of a project, which is one of the things I'm passionate about, getting the right product in the first place. So Adam, Mike, it's all yours.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I'm from Gilling Dodd Architects. We've specialist healthcare architects. Basically, we're 60 strong staff from Chorley, although we have quite a spread across the country. I think people believe we're quite a bit bigger than we are. We basically split the office into two. We've got acute specialisms, of which I'm part of, and then we've got the mental health side of the business. I've worked in both sides, so I've got a bit of experience in the two of them. Next slide. So yeah, so we've obviously we do the glossy sort of new builds, but more often than not, and particularly at the moment from my side of the office, is dealing with sort of A&Es and going into existing buildings. And in doing so, we sort of find a massive sort of chasm really in experience from some trusts. I mean, the sort of thoroughness, Karen, from you were discussing, is an absolute breath of fresh air. Now we can go from somebody like that and a trust like that to a trust where you sort of ask for the fire drawings and they say, oh, we threw them in a skip 10 years ago. So we really do have a massive chasm. So I might be sort of teaching you to suck eggs, some of you, but others, there are obviously big sort of gaps in knowledge and understanding and record keeping. So from our point of view, we're sort of, like I say, we're going into existing buildings, and we might find, what tends to happen is we start looking at the doors maybe, or it's a door replacement or some other smaller works, and the works just seem to snowball. So from some instances, you might be looking at, and particularly when we're talking about managing the risk with reality, which is sort of the theme of the talk, is we'll go into a building and we get to the point where we say, well, actually, to remediate these walls, it's simply impossible to actually, you have to shut half the hospital because we've got services on the hospital street that we just cannot disrupt. So we've gone to the point of even going into a hospital and undertaking fire tests on the actual worst system that they can possibly find in the hospital. So making it as bad as it can be. And in doing so, I mean, we did a test, and Knauf were there, and it was their system. So we did basically our drawings with our title block were there on the desk, and the contractor was building it as badly as he possibly could to see what is the actual minimum that would survive the fire test. And Knauf were all over it, saying, "What are Gilling Dodd doing these drawings are absolute rubbish." So, but they had to explain. The contractor jumped and said, "No, it's seeing how bad this can be." So they did the test and it actually passed. So it's quite interesting. Just because something hasn't got a fire certificate doesn't mean it will fail. And it's that kind of thing of managing risk within a building, because you're going to potentially lose more people's lives shutting down an A&E for a length of time than actually, what might be the issues of fire. So yeah, like I said, we do the CAMS units, and we do a whole lot of sort of variety of building types, even down to sort of car parks, which again, from a fire point of view, are a nightmare. But if there's anything sort of related to healthcare, we tend to do it, whether it's car parks, whether it's ambulance stations, elderly care homes, and that kind of thing. That's what we do. So yeah, that's.
Thank you. That's brilliant. So some interesting points there. There's a common theme, isn't there, about we see it from a manufacturer's point of view. We see it. We can deliver the certified product, the right product, but if it's not fitted in the right way, it's not worth the paper it's written on. So clearly, coming from the regulatory changes which Maz has outlined that developed over this past year and what's coming, there's some interesting points there. And maintenance is something that's being honed in on and addressed, which is fantastic. So I guess that's going to give us a platform for some practical questions. You'll all have some, I've no doubt. I've got a few here as well, but I think it's probably fair first to go to the floor. If anybody has a question specifically for one of the panel, would they like to go for it now? We have two here. So, okay, we'll start on the left. Let's be fair. So Simon Bloxham from Nuffield.
Thank you. Great presentations. Maz, one thing I wanted to ask about, you said about the primary and secondary. I'm the Group Fire Safety Officer for Nuffield Health, was for Spire Healthcare as well. So we buy in our fire risk assessments. The problem I've got is people understanding what the difference between a primary and secondary risk assessment is. When you look at the actual documentation for it, spot the differences, which there aren't too many. And I wondered if there was any thoughts on this now that's been, I think, reintroduced, whether there's going to be any amendment with this, with the 0502 changes. I know it's a separate document, but with the 0502 changes, whether there's any more of a risk-based approach to it. I've done a version of that secondary one and supplied it to an assessor to use. But I just wondered if there was any movement on that. I know you did say about feedback on that particular one as well.
Thank you. That's a brilliant question. If you look online on the NHS England website, you will see the HCMO 503 Part K, and then you'll see in Word format the templates that you can use. The reason they're in Word formats is that you can take it and you can amend it so that it suits your needs. We'd like you to keep, the main headings there, but the reason we've gone for a primary and a secondary is that the primary is usually in the control of facilities management. They'll control the fire alarm overall, the fire compartmentation, the external walls, the common parts, the staircases. So those are all the areas in the primary. The secondary will be the wards and departments. So the wards and departments will probably be under control of local managers. So we want the local managers to have control over their areas. So we want the secondary specific to those areas. And it says in Part K that the person that's responsible for that is the local manager, usually in conjunction with the person that's doing the fire risk assessment. But that brings in a whole load of management stuff, which is critical to the operation, the safe operation of that area. So that's the reason we've gone for the primary and the secondary. It wasn't my idea. I think Scotland introduced it before us. So we like to see what's working well and copy it. And one of the hospitals I worked at or was responsible for some of was Manchester Royal Infirmary, and Andy Kuchak, who was the fire officer there, introduced it there, and it seemed to work well. So that's what we've adopted. And interestingly enough, I've had questions about it. I haven't had any real negative feedback. So if anyone has any, then please get back to me. Just, yeah, yes. A lot of the things will be similar, but if you, as I said, it's a Word document for you to take it, do what you will with it, keep the important bits, add to it. I don't even mind if you take it away. If you do take anything away, though, just make a note of what you've taken away and the reasons why. So if the fire brigade come along and do an audit and say, well, hang on a second, you've taken these bits out, you've got the justification for it there.
Thank you, Maz. So I think the next question was Ian Turford from NHS England. Sorry, I'm doing the names for the benefit of online.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you. Question for Karen, really, about your technical note 1, very comprehensive document. The only thing I couldn't see anything on your schematic, it was about threshold gaps. And we all know that specified threshold gaps can cause a lot of problems. What are your thoughts or your approach to that?
I'm staying on the stool. It's too hard to get back on it. So obviously the British standard says for a fire and smoke door, the threshold gap has got to be 3 mil. I would expect a brand new door to be fitted to that level. The doors we've currently got, I will accept 10 mil for a smoke seal, for the bottom of the threshold on a smoke door, only because we've got an L1 fire alarm system. If I was in a building that didn't have an L1 fire alarm system, we would have a different thought, and we would potentially be looking at threshold seals or relipping the bottom of the door. But all our trust is L1 fire alarm, and I'm quite happy with a 10 mil gap on the smoke door. And we've documented that, because if I make it 3 mil, the doors won't open. So it's just looking at practically what we can do. And with a lot of areas that used to have carpet down, I went into a room the other week that had got, they were doing testing of bodily fluids in a room with a carpet. And I was like, how have we missed this? So carpet areas have made a lot of the gaps quite big, but I'm quite happy as long as it's 10 mil or under.
So yeah, from our point of view, sometimes we do have drop seals. We can. I know infection control don't like it, but it's this balancing risk situation again. So sometimes on just very few doors where there is a big tolerance across the threshold, they will allow a drop seal for the odd doors. Furthermore, if we're going doing a kind of reasonable refurbishment on a scheme, we will get them to get the contractor to survey each threshold and the swing of the door, and get them to prepare the door to kind of reduce that tolerance, getting it down to the 3 mil. So it doesn't work on just a door set replacement, but if you're doing something a bit more substantial, it's worth going in, and we get all the fire doors surveyed prior to going in. So it's just latexing it and bringing that level up to a 3 mil tolerance.
The issue I've found for mental health is you can't have a face fixed seal, and the accreditation bodies won't let you fit an under door threshold seal to an existing door. So it does mean we've got quite a lot of challenges when we're retrofitting things to doors in areas.
Nathan, if you shout, if you any questions from online, I can't see that, sorry. So we have one over here. Sorry, if you could just introduce yourself, please.
Hi, Matt Goddard, Croydon. Very interested in what I was listening to about retrofitting your doors. From a pragmatic point of view, doors will get broken in trusts, particularly in those high area corridors. And I'm just mindful of the fact that, as you say, when we retrofit, we start putting protection on it. Very often I have a debate with an authorizing engineer or the manufacturer about what is compliant. When you start getting into assurances, sign off for AE reports, what's the solution? Because you're pulling all these plans together. We need to be pragmatic. We know we're going to put wall protection on, or protection on doors. Is that going to be endorsed in this next round of policies? Because it's a question we all face. Do we have a compliant door system? Yes, it's more pragmatic and will do the job, but it's not as per the manufacturer's guidelines. So we could fall foul with insurance and various other things. Where do we sit going forward?
Thank you. And that's a really interesting question. And interestingly enough, I worked at Croydon Hospital for a while. And when I was there, the carpenters were busy fitting door protection to lots and lots of doors. And it looked amazing, and they did a splendid job. And it seemed to, made a big difference on how long they lasted. I'm in favour of it. A door is tested to a certain standard, and it's only certified as it's tested, as the manufacturer specifies. So there's two ways of doing it: going to the manufacturers and saying, if we fit this, will it be okay? And that's probably a question to ask SDS rather than me. And then the next one is, what if it's a 20-year-old door, but it's still in good order? We want to give it some protection. And if you look in part 0503 part K, there's quite a big section in there on fire doors, and it does give you a reasonable amount of leeway on protection of fire doors, or on specifying fire doors that are existing, notional fire doors effectively. How long do you need your fire doors to last is a really good question. And the answer is, you may need them to last 30 minutes. In Croydon, the fire brigade are just down the road. They're going to be there in 5 minutes. They're not going to stand outside saying, there's a 30-minute door there, we'll just wait a bit for the fire to die down before we go in. they'll be in there. The fire door will be open. It will have served its purpose. Other fire doors around will be holding the fire back. It's a really good question. And in regard to 0502, it is one I think I hadn't thought of putting it in there, but now you've mentioned it, it's a really good place to put it. And I think we'll be in discussion with manufacturers and specifiers and say, this is what we'd like to put in there, because it makes such a difference to how long the doors last.
Thank you, Maz. On that point, I have a question actually here as well, which has come in. How will the to be published HTM 0501 impact the fire safety management structure? So just going on that same theme.
Yeah, well, I put the management chart up there. The main difference is at the moment we have an authorising engineer fire, which you mentioned. You've got to keep your authorising engineer fire happy. At the moment, that authorising engineer fire is supposed to be, in the current version, is a chartered engineer. We looked at what needs to be done by that person, what role they're doing, and the main thing they're doing is they're coming in and doing an annual audit of fire safety. And we also looked at the Engineering Council's definition of what a chartered engineer and an incorporated engineer should do. And we decided it perhaps wasn't appropriate for that person to be a chartered engineer, but they do need to have competence and a very good level of fire safety knowledge. But it's more about auditing than it is about engineering fire safety. So as I showed the diagram earlier on, the fire engineer, that chartered, and we've said if it's a complex design, it should be a chartered engineer. If it's less complex, then an incorporated engineer would do the job. And we just followed the Engineering Council guidance on that. And we said they will then feed in as necessary, providing that information. So that might well be about your fire doors, for instance, that was mentioned earlier on. So the management structure has changed quite a bit. You'll see what I put on the board earlier has been superseded slightly, but it's reasonably accurate. So you'll see it when it's published in very short shrift, I hope.
Thank you. That's excellent. One from the online audience. Nathan, I'll hand you the mic and you can ask on their behalf.
Hi, yeah, it's a question from Dale Mills asking about the requirements for inspections, and basically asking if it's a legal requirement for an external contractor to carry it out annually, or whether it can be done internally. It was aimed at Maz, but I know Karen mentioned it as well, so I don't know how you want to. Yeah, he's from University Plymouth.
So just tell me that bit again, because I was listening to Maz's bit. I think you'd need to evidence that whoever was doing it was competent to do it. I don't think it says anywhere it's got to be an external contractor. We do all our doors every 6 months, and I do one of the inspections as part of the fire risk assessment, and the joinery team do the other inspection, and then we get the work done that we need to do out of there. So I think you'd need to evidence that they were competent in whatever way you could do that.
I'll quickly add the legal requirement is Article 17 of the Fire Safety Order, which is outcomes based. So they must be maintained in an efficient state, efficient working order, and good condition. I think something like that. Anyway. So if you look at a fire door and it's, well, let's say someone like Karen comes along and looks at it and it's perfectly good, it's been maintained in an efficient state. How long do you need to check them? It varies, as I said earlier on. You need to decide for yourself. Most people do it annually or 6 monthly because that's an easy figure to work to. One hospital I worked on had different coloured stickers, so that if it was a yellow sticker, you might do it monthly. If it's a blue sticker, 3 monthly, red sticker, 2 weekly even. And some went to several years. It depends on two main factors. One is the criticality of the door. How important is it in that location? If it's low risk, you probably get away with doing it less often. And what's the, sorry, three factors, in fact. The usage of the door, how much is it used? You know, a door to an electrical riser, this might be opened half a dozen times a year. You don't need to test it so often, probably. So it's criticality usage. And the third one is likelihood to suffer impact damage. There are doors out there, for instance, doors to theatres are favourites, where trolleys are being wheeled in and out of theatres all day long by porters, and there's usually a nurse walking along beside them as well, who may or may not hold the door open, and they just get bashed and damaged. Mental health is another example as well. Mental health doors probably need to be checked more often. So the legal requirement is Article 17 of the Fire Safety Order. Have a read of it, see what it says, and then you need to write your own protocol. 0501, the current version and the new version both have a chapter on protocols, and one of those protocols is on maintenance. Write it on fire door maintenance, so that when the inspecting authority come along to check, you can say, this is our protocol, this is what we do. What I would also do is, when you've written your protocol, I'd send it to them and say, this is what we've written. Let us know if you're really unhappy with it. They may or may not get back to you, but even if they don't, you can already, and anything happens, you can say to them, well, we sent it to you and gave you the opportunity to comment.
Brilliant, thank you. That actually leads into a question I've had in here for Alan. So Alan, your reference documents, which are obviously have been put together through feedback from NARFO, hospital trust personnel, fire brigade personnel, NHS England personnel. You referenced the 3 types of fire door inspection. Could you just summarise what the need for 3 types is?
Thanks, Russell. That's a really good question. When people are talking about inspecting an existing door, as just been discussed in the previous question, we're talking about what is called as the reference document, it's a type 3 inspection. A type 3 inspection implies that there's 2 other types. A type 1 is for brand new doors, where you want to make sure that it's as fire tested as procured, and you want to make sure there's a complete golden thread of information. That's a type 1 inspection, which is very pedantic, very prescriptive, because you've got all the information, excuse me, on what's been procured. You should be matching that up and ensuring that what you've ordered is actually being delivered. So that's a type 1 inspection. A type 2 inspection is an existing door, one that may have been installed 10 years ago, 30 years ago. It might have been installed last year though. And although in theory it's fire compliant, it may not be, because we know that there's massive issues, there've been issues with brand new doors and old doors alike. Old doors are unlikely to have a golden thread of information. So what you've got to do is expertly assess those existing doors, because how do you know that there's the right specification for their location? How do you know that when a fire starts, that door will hold back the fire and hold back the smoke to support progressive or face horizontal evacuation? You don't. So that's why you've got to have a type 2 type of inspection. And just to be clear, you only need to do either a type 1 or a type 2, and then you go on to a type 3. And a type 3 is all about managing and maintaining a door that you know is to the correct fire compliant state. What I should have said yesterday, earlier on, is that this information is clearly in the reference document. What I've just described and what was on the slide is on page 55 of the reference document on doors. These reference documents are freely available. They're sponsored by my old company, Golden Thread Fire Delay. They're freely available. If anybody who doesn't have them wants hard copies, they can contact me and I'll arrange for Golden Thread to send them. They're also emailable, so they're online. People can get hold of the electronic copy of these today. So thanks for the question.
Thank you, Alan. Mike, Ralph from NHS Ashore.
It's a little bit of it's not so much a question, it's more of a sort of conversation about where we were going. I mean, a long time ago, myself and Maz were working at Queen Mary's in Roehampton, and there were issues about fire doors being closed. And all the checking procedures, we looked to do some work with Drax, and we put monitors on the doors to make sure that they were actually closed. I think Nick might have been sort of there at the end of it. And you get all this sort of data from this Wi-Fi mesh and these read relays. And what fell out the back of it was the fact that it also recorded every time the doors opened and closed. So you got some idea of what your use was. And there was a set of cross corridor doors that were on the, I think you come out the main wing going to the Douglas Barder section of it, away from the mental health. And we looked at it, and these things had like 10,000 operations a day. And we thought, well, there's got to be something wrong with the sensor, or, it'd be flapping in the wind to be doing that. So we went down there and looked at it, and it went, ba-dum, 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 ba-dum. It virtually was never closed. And there was other doors in the areas that did that. And the information we got from that, we looked at help with the maintenance, because you knew that what doors you're going to have to go and maintain, but also it's putting hold opens on them and other ways of managing it and looking at it. So it's information that you can get off of your maintenance and off of other systems that can help you do your sort of door maintenance and inspections. I mean, if you could have taken it to the stage where you knew, because roughly the figures were fairly similar of door usage, so you could have almost predictively known that you're going to have to look at the hinges after 100,000 operations. That would be 8 months or 6 months or whatever it was. So there's a lot of things you can do to assist in how you sort of review stuff, and you're proactively monitoring it rather than just sort of waiting for an inspection and the lipping's kicked off or the glazing bead's broken. So there are other ways to do it, and again, myself has put a lot in SFG 20 on that, which has got some about risk assessed evidence based maintenance. So there's a lot we can do on that.
That's brilliant, thank you. And that kind of leads me on to the point about specification in a second, but I know you're absolutely right. There's systems out there that can track the usage and help us to inform our decisions. I know, I'm looking at you, Simon and Ian, further to a meeting we had last year. In the market, there is a lot of R&D going on. There's stuff out there. There's products being improved and worked on, and where it's all about the data, and we can use that data to monitor and manage, and ultimately improve patient safety up front. Because as we know, we're in a sector which is challenged for cash. We have a lot to deliver. We have a lot that isn't up to standard, which we would love to change, and we can't afford to. And we don't have the time to either. So it's about managing what we've got and making it better. So this whole management of risk, but that does feed back into a question here, Adam, for you, about specifying the right product in the first place. And it's not only the right product, but the right system. So it could be the automation. Do you want to say a bit about that?
Yeah, it's interesting. It feeds into that, what you're saying then. A lot of the time, say for simply protecting a door, it's like, right, how can we, what face protection, what frame protection do we have on this door? If you go back, like you were saying, is trying to avoid the door getting hit in the first place, and then back even to the HBM for circulation. How can we design circulation spaces so there's enough room to manoeuvre? Now, it might be that if you look at the HBM circulation, it shows a lobby door, for example, for bed movement. It's about 5 meters or something, and it's got automatic sliding doors. Well, that's not a hinge door. As soon as you get onto a hospital site, there's not the room to put that in. You can't have the sliding doors. There's not the width of the corridor. So it's just that how you go back and in the first instance design to allow the staff the best opportunity to manoeuvre and move beds through the hospital. So we've had works in ED departments where they've value engineered all the wall protection and everything. They've value engineered sliding doors. They put hinge doors in, and suddenly you've got corridors that are quite narrow, and you've got one sort of nurse trying to maneuver a bed through, and they're hitting. It's like a pinball. They're hitting every bit of partition, door, all the doors, and you got a department there that sort of looks about 10 years old, 6 months in, and it's simply because there's been value engineering happened, and it's sort of it's a false economy. So there's that kind of thing, and we can look at alternatives, like you make it as maneuverable as possible, and obviously give yourself the best chance from a design point of view. But then looking at items like automated doors and powered doors. So instead of the porter going bashing his way through a door, it's opening for him. And in doing so, okay, there might be other maintenance issues with motorized doors and so on, powered doors, but it gives you the best chance of trying to keep the doors out of the way of the porters and bed movement. And again, hold opens. If that door's spending most of its time open anyway, well, it might as well be on hold open. And then in the event of a fire, then it releases and it's doing its job. It's not, it's not broken up. So yeah, there's sort of a lot of things. And as well, when you come to sort of replacement doors, it's understanding sort of the robustness of the door. Like Maz said before, it's the right door for the right situation. So if you've got busy doors that are, that are continually affected by bed movement, going to working with people like yourselves with the expertise and saying, right, what have you got from a door set point of view, providing the face protection that's up to the job. You know, in sort of back of house sort of offices, it might be simple kick plate to a door. And like Maz said, you know, if a door's only opened half a dozen times a year, then there's probably no issue. But the time and the focus and working with professionals and suppliers like yourselves is getting that most robust door in the most challenging situations.
Thank you, Adam. That's helpful. Yes, we've seen the tough side of that, where budgets have been cut. We talked about V, this dreaded ultra V, which we all kind of offer ourselves up on, where the right product is designed down. It's not only doors, but other products as well. And we're meeting a price, then within a year, we're back in there trying to make the things safe retrospectively, which is a poor show. That's what I'm passionate about, is getting away from that. So any more questions from the floor? We have one from online.
Yeah, this is from Sean Davis, who's also from NHS Trust in Plymouth. He asked if the revised HTM 0502 is going to recommend that fire doors in high traffic areas and new builds should be recessed into walls to prevent them from being used as target practice for porters and prolong the life of the door. I guess it comes back to the point of right application in new builds, but yeah, I don't know who wants to take that.
That's another good question, and following on from the earlier question, we will look very closely at fire doors because they are a huge cost in terms of when they get bashed. Replacement or repair of them is very expensive, and it happens a lot. I would normally expect to see fire doors recessed as suggested, so they don't get bashed, or some similar fend-off device put in place to prevent people bashing into them. One thing I will mention, which is in HTML 503 Part B on fire alarm systems that we introduced just nearly 2 years ago now, was we've given previously on hold open devices that if there was a fire in that zone, or I think it was in an adjacent zone as well, not sure about that, but all of the doors in that zone closed automatically. We've changed that. We said that if there are specific reasons for it, you might want doors to stay open while the evacuation is occurring and only close when there is smoke in the proximity of that door. And one of the reasons for that is when I looked through the video of the Great Ormond Street Hospital fire back in about 2008-ish, I think it was, 2007, there are people holding the cross corridor doors open, and that's what they're doing to let the patients be wheeled out. And there's no smoke in the corridor. There's absolutely no reason why at that stage why those doors should be closed. It's just impeding egress and impeding communications as well. So that is something that's in there, that's in Part B. So I'll just plug that because I don't know anyone's used it. You know, the biggest drawback with that is when you come to do your testing of your fire alarm and you set off the call point or the smoke detector, those doors probably won't close, and you'll think, or someone testing them think, well, there's something wrong here. But make sure you just check, test the smoke detectors either side of them, and then they should close.
Brilliant, thank you. So any more questions on the floor? I've got one last question here, which I think Karen's very headed towards you, and it's a practical question. How could Trust prioritise, or how should Trust prioritise fire door replacement when budgets are so tight?
So we look at the area, we prioritise the area where the progressive hazard evacuation or evacuation will take place, and we prioritise those doors. So I might have hazard room doors that could also do with looking at, but as long as I can evacuate people safely, that's the route we prioritise. And we will prioritise it from a fire door and a compartmentation perspective so that we know the evacuation route is safe and we can achieve progressive horizontal evacuation.
Brilliant, thank you. I think that brings us to the end of our questions. So I would like to just do a really quick roundup, and I just say I'm really passionate about what we can do in a time like today, where we have persons from every involved aspect getting together, giving up their time freely, and kind of talking about even having Maz here, thank you, from NHS England as kind of, you know, the central point where they're forming the regulations, the way that we can all feed into that. So us as the manufacturer, the designer, the hospital trust, the tier 1 contractors, and I really believe that's what we should be doing. And we are seeing a lot more evidence of that in this day and age. I'm really pleased to be involved in the roundtable peer review of the door package of the new hostel programme, because, and again, we can see the same thing being evidenced. I know there's probably a lot more political clamour around that, but at the heart of it, getting the right product designed in at the beginning is what we should be doing, because ultimately we try and work in our company. We might be selling doors, we might be selling fire dams, we might be selling services, whatever we're doing. Ultimately, what overlines it all is we're trying to deliver safety. We've seen what goes wrong, and obviously the industry's had a massive wake up call in what's happened at Grenfell, has resulted in a huge number of changes. So I'm going to be asking Maz if he would be happy to return again this time next year, again, to review any changes that I've no doubt are coming. We've hinted at them already. We know some of the directions are going on about maintenance, and some of the rules are going to be coming out about that. But we did host a forum the other day here on the building safety regulation as well, and how the challenges that are coming out of that, how we can help each other. We'd be glad to hear from anyone who has other ideas for forums. We're going to try and host one every 3 months. We're really happy to use this space to lend it to the industry, to the healthcare sector, something we're all passionate about. So if anyone wants to use this space, do give us a shout. NARFO are using it for meetings now. We have various branches are holding their meetings here. But anyone else who wants to, and it's related to the industry and to betterment of good practice, we're really happy to hear from you. So please do. Just one last thing. I think Maz and from NHS and Mike from NHS Ashore up in Scotland just wanted to use this opportunity to say something and present something, I believe, to Alan. So.
Hi, yeah, this is on behalf of NARFO, National Association of Healthcare Fire Officers. Mike's gone to a lot of trouble here to polish up this lovely fireman's.
It's not parade grade, but I mean, we've been trying to get you this since you left NAFO, and me being in Scotland and everything, and it just not sort of tying up. We'd like to give you this, and I mean, the heritage of it is it's been sympathetically restored. I think is word is. It's not parade grade one, but it was used in the war. It's got the gentleman's number on it there. I got it off a guy called Mick Holder, who was in the auxiliary fire reserve. Or was, I think, been dead, but I mean, he's sort of son, and he used that, and he kept it, and they've never known what to do with it, and he sort of gave it to me because he knew I liked restoring old tools, he likes it, something like that. So we'd like to give that to you. That helped save London, and you've helped save London as well in a bit of it. So congratulations.
Well, thank you, Mike, and thank you, Maz. I think that sort of is a really, really good example of why I want to carry on post-retirement, because when I joined NARFO 7 years ago to write these reference documents, or set up a working group to write the reference documents, I was taken in immediately as a part of NARFO, which was tremendous for me, having come from the private sector. And I think you can see why I'm so passionate about looking to ensure that private companies actually install doors properly, because it's this. Sorry, but you can see that there's a big job that needs to be done. And when I retired at 70, I thought, well, if I don't do it, I'm not sure who else would do it, because few people have the time. And I've been so focused on this, getting fire doors adequate, fire compartments adequate, not fire tested and fully compliant, but suitable and sufficient for their locations. And I'm just so pleased that people to continue to make me feel welcome at NARFO, and I'm going to do my best to deliver a really good paper. And again, I'd like everyone here and everyone online to get involved if you can. That'd be fantastic. So thanks again.
Thank you, Alan. So there's a great call. So if we want to put some practice in after this to do our own bit in furthering what we do and help the betterment going forwards, by all means, reach out. Now, I need to get the speaker's permission. I would be surprised they didn't give it, that I could circulate their details afterwards to everyone that's attended today. So that, of course, you can get in touch, reach out directly. And of course, then you can get hold of Alan if you want to get involved. I'm not sure I want to be traveling with Alan on the tube with the axe, but I hope he gets home without being arrested. But I think that kind of draws us to a close. So first, please do help yourselves to more food or drinks on the way out. There's quite a bit there. We're really pleased to have seen you. Thank you so much for coming, and do keep your by virtue of being here today, you will have signed up, so you will be on our list. So we'll let you know of any future events. But genuinely, be really glad to hear from you of ideas as well, of other topics for the future. I've set myself a goal this year, every 3 months, to get another one in. But again, if you want to have a group meeting here with your trust, or we had guys in St Thomas here the other day, and we're looking to get a bigger team of them in for an update session. There's many possibilities, and we're glad to hear from you. So thank you very much, and thank you to the speakers. Thank you for giving it your time, for coming from, you've all come quite some distance, actually. I appreciate that. And I hope you all have a safe journey home and a good rest of your day. Thank you.